Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And to be perfectly honest, it's actually Saturday afternoon right now as I am recording this due to obligations on Sunday, still a little under the weather as well. But here we go. So if something major happened from Saturday evening to Sunday morning, you know I'll cover it next week. With that, let's dive in because a lot has happened in the last 6 days or so. First, we are starting with Parker Hannifin. I'm just going to call him Parker. They're an American-based company specializing in motion and control technologies whose customers include Airbus, Boeing, Rolls-Royce, Lockheed Martin, etc., etc. Parker has now acknowledged a security breach that basically precipitated the theft of employee data. Now, last month, the Conti ransomware gang released basically on the dark web what looked like data to be stolen from Parker Hannifin. After conducting an investigation, Parker Hannifin found that the files accessed by the attackers may have contained information regarding not only its current 58,000 employees, but also former employees, their dependents, and members of Parker's group's health insurance plan. So anyone basically who falls within this scope may have had the following information stolen: name, social security number, date of birth, address, driver's license number, U.S. passport number, bank and routing numbers, online account usernames and passwords, health insurance enrollment information, dates of coverage, dates of service, healthcare provider names, claims information, medical and clinical treatment information. In other words, if you have ever worked for Parker Hannifin, if they haven't notified you, I highly recommend you go check in. Moving on, let's talk about the Bank of Zambia, and this one is a tad amusing, and please pardon my upcoming language. Blame the Zambians for this, not me. But here's what's happening. Last week, they basically disclosed a recent technical outage due to a cyber attack. Now, while the Bank of Zambia did not disclose the details of this cyber attack, the publication Bleeping Computer learned that the attack was conducted by the Hive ransomware gang, which claimed to have encrypted the bank's network-attached storage device, obviously after stealing a whole bunch of data. However, and this is where I say, excuse my language, instead of paying the ransomware, the bank representatives responded to the ransom negotiation by making fun of the hackers' quote-unquote skills. They then proceeded to post a link to a dick pic while stating, and again, pardon my language, I quote the Bank of Zambia directly, "Suck this dick and stop locking bank networks thinking that you will monetize something. Learn to monetize." Bank of Zambia not taking this one lying down. Again, excuse my language. Moving on, the Philadelphia-based law firm Stevens and Lee, and basically they're in the news now, and this is stemming from a June 2021 attack. The extent of the breach, quote, has grown to include 23,066 people whose personal information was potentially compromised, including customers of the firm's financial institution clients, according to public records. The original estimate of the data breach? 344 people, now 23,066, and there you go. Moving on, let's talk about publishing giant Nikkei out of Japan. They basically disclosed that the group's headquarters in Singapore, not Japan, Singapore, was hit by a ransomware attack almost 1 week ago on May 13th. Quote, unauthorized access to the server was first detected on May 13, prompting an internal probe. Now, Nikkei says that they're currently investigating if the attackers were able to access any of their customer data that was stored on impacted servers. Until now, they haven't said anything. They are investigating a ransomware attack and say they have no evidence anything actually has been leaked. We'll see what happens with Nikkei out of Singapore, not Japan. Moving on, we need to talk about teacher evaluation vendor Batale for Kids. They basically got targeted in a ransomware attack on December 1st of last year. I actually remember reporting on that a while back, but now we're starting to see disclosures, and the first one up is the entire Chicago public school system, one of the largest school systems in the United States with at least 500,000 students and over 60,000 employees. Obviously, that's a big hit. We'll see if New York, LA, Houston, and Atlanta also have to declare as well. But heads up, if your school district uses Batale for Kids, you may be caught up in this sooner than later. Moving on, I want to talk about pharmacy retailer Dischem. In a statement, Dischem said that it was contracted by a third-party service provider and operator for certain managed services that developed the database for Dischem. The database contains, quote, certain categories of personal information necessary for the services offered by Dischem. Now, this incident apparently impacted 3,687,881 data subjects, quote unquote, and that's basically personal information being accessed, which were first name, last name, email address, and cell phone numbers. However, Dischem went on to say that the unauthorized party might use any of the impacted information, quote, based on the categories of personal information impacted, there is a possibility that any impacted personal information may be used by the unauthorized party to commit further criminal activities such as phishing, email compromise, social engineering, and or impersonation attempts. In other words, basically the kitchen sink because they've got your data. I do not know that third party, but I do know Dischem, DIS-CHEM. If you have anything to do with them, heads up. Moving on, we want to talk about the Texas State Department of Insurance because the personal information of almost 2 million Texans who filed claims with the Texas Department of Insurance was exposed publicly and available for nearly 3 years, according to a state audit released last week. Now, the department says the personal information of 1.8 million workers who have filed compensation claims, including social security numbers, address, dates of birth, phone numbers, and information about workers' injuries, was accessible online to members of the public from March 2019 to January of this year, almost 3 years. Now, TDI officials said that the department was in the midst of a regularly scheduled data management audit when the department discovered the unauthorized disclosure and reported it to auditors on March 24th. After the state audit was completed, TDI posted a public notice acknowledging this issue from January, and here we are. Obviously a huge problem. So if you filed a claim with the Texas Department of Insurance, all you Texas workers, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Trust Stamp. This is a facial recognition company with a $7.2 million ICE contract, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement here in the United States. They left personal information on quote-unquote several dozen people unsecured on a breached database, according to Business Insider. The information was names, birthday, home address, and driver's license data. An anonymous tip who said that they were a security researcher contacted Business Insider and disclosed the breach. Insider confirmed the authenticity of the data breach with people basically named in the data leak. Trust Stamp then confirmed the security vulnerability and breach to Insider. So there you go. If you have anything to do with Trust Stamp, heads up to you, or maybe detained by ICE, that would probably be another one, if not their employees. Moving on, let's talk about Arn Prior Regional Health in Ottawa, Canada. A cyber attack compromising data basically going back decades has now taken place. They became aware of this on December 21st of last year. We're talking names, birth dates, contact information, health card numbers, recent hospital visits, and diagnosis. Now, ARH says the earliest information that was accessed was from April of 1996 and all the way through. So there you go. If you have anything to do with the Arn Prior Regional Health, or ARH, in Ottawa or around Ottawa, Canada, heads up, you could be caught up in this, literally going back decades. Moving on, let's talk about the Texas-based Christus Health, which operates around 600 healthcare facilities in the United States, Mexico, and South America. A sample of the data allegedly stolen from Christus was posted on the Avos Locker dark web leaks site, and that includes basically cancer patient registry information such as names, dates of birth, social security, diagnosis, medical information, and more. And these were basically related to cases planned for discussion at an April cancer tumor conference. So if you have anything to do with Christus Health and this past April went to a cancer tumor conference, you definitely want to contact them. Moving on, let's talk about the National Registration Department of Malaysia. Possibly. Now, here's what's up. Following a recent report that personal data belonging to 22.5 million Malaysians was put up for sale, Malaysia's Home Affairs Minister, Dato Seri Hamzah Zaiduin, denies that the data came from the National Registration Department, known as JPN. Now, he said Home Affairs will investigate the individuals and the sale of this personal data. And to quickly recap, an individual offered to sell the database of 22.5 million Malaysians, which claim to be obtained via JPN's My Identity API. Now, that's 160 gigabytes worth of data, and it claims to cover all Malaysian adults who were born between 1940 and 2004. This sale, posted in an online forum, acts basically as a marketplace for leaks, all that kind of stuff, and they basically put up proof by offering 4 million Malaysians information up. Now, there you go. They basically have to provide proof, that the database was legit. The seller even provided sample data belonging belonging to the Home Minister himself, the one I just mentioned, whose name I'm not going to repeat because I probably butchered it initially. Now, the records contain full name, address, date of birth, gender, IC number, race, religion, as well as photo in the IC, which I'm assuming is like a national identity card IC. There you go. So heads up, Malaysians, if you were born between 1940 and 2004, your government may have your data hit. Moving on, let's talk about Gershman Investment Corp. They confirm that they experienced a data breach after an unauthorized party gained access to the company's computer network and basically stole information. Now, according to Gershman, the breach resulted in names, social security numbers, driver's license, passports, and financial account numbers being compromised. On May 13 of this year, Gershman filed the notice of breach, and here we are. So if you have anything to do with Gershman Investment Corp or Gershman Mortgage, heads up to you. Moving on, and finally, and we've got a couple of interesting finalies for you this week. First, we're going to be talking about the citizens of the states of Colorado and Tennessee, and this is an interesting one. Now, this is coming from local news in Nashville, so it's more Tennessean focused, but Coloradans, however you say you're Coloradoans, you're in this as well as others. Here's what's going on. A human rights and civil liberties organization has published a report indicating that Coloradoans, and Tennesseans, that one I know, are among the most targeted by big tech and companies that share your data. Now, the Irish Council for Civil Liberties has issued the, quote, the biggest data breach report, which analyzed the scale of, quote, real-time bidding, or RTB, in websites and apps used in the United States and also Europe. RTB tracks and broadcasts it to companies for purchasing and selling of digital advertisement. Now, according to this report, and I quote, RTB is the biggest data breach ever recorded. It tracks and shares what people view online and their real-world location 294 billion times in the United States and 197 billion times in Europe every single day. Now, the report examined and ranked real-time bidding broadcast averages per person, per day, per state. Colorado led all 50 states as well as led European countries with 987 estimated broadcasts per day for each single person in Colorado. Now, Tennessee, as I mentioned, focused on Tennessee. This was a publication. They ranked 21st out of all 50 states plus European states on a list with 799 broadcasts per day per citizen or per person in Tennessee. Not only is this obviously more than a majority of the states, it was also more than over 30 countries in Europe. Now, based on this report, this means that a person in Tennessee, for example, will have their activity and location exposed 799 times every single day. The report adds that in the US, 4,698 companies receive RTB data from Google, and the company broadcasts data 31 billion times every single day just in the United States. ICCL also says these figures for the report were taken from industry figures whose source is confidential. That is an absolute enormous amount of data mining. I mean, think about that with that report. I mean, it's insane. 987 broadcasts per day on you if you live in Colorado, 799 if you live in Tennessee. That's nuts. Every single day, Google basically is broadcasting 31 billion points of this, basically your activity and your location. That is insane, and they are selling it to basically everybody. So that is crazy. So with that, we have one more finally, and I actually wanted to talk about this one last because we need to talk about the country of Greenland. Obviously, they're part of Denmark, but they're their own thing. Now, it appears that Costa Rica, and I've talked about this one at length as well, isn't the only country making headlines due to cyber attack. If you recall, Costa Rica, basically their entire government got hit by Conti. They say that they are not going to pay the ransom. Conti says we're going to shut you down. I actually talked about that on Tech Time Radio the other day because now that we know, thanks to the Conti leaks, that Conti has deep ties to the Russian government, there could be, I think, a case made that Costa Rica basically could claim that Russia is attacking them. And what does that look like given the close ties to Conti and Russian intelligence, as I just mentioned on air a few days ago live? Now, Here's what's going on in Greenland. For the past week and a half or so, Greenland's health service has reportedly been struggling to recover from a cyber attack that basically crippled its systems, causing long wait times and forcing doctors in Greenland to resort to using pen and paper instead of computers. Although it's not currently believed that any data has been stolen by the attackers, the attack on Greenland's health service has caused huge disruptions since May 9th of this year. Now, one of the first signs came when the doctor.gl was found to be offline, initially described as a quote-unquote system crash. Now, patients are being told to expect longer wait times than usual, and some appointments may have to be canceled. In addition, Greenland's government, and I am totally going to butcher this, but let's give this a whirl. The Greenland government is called the Naalakkersuitsut. Let's say I'm close. I have no idea. I apologize, any Greenlanders here. Basically, the Greenland government, let's just put it that way, is advising those seeking assistance that they should contact health services via a telephone number rather than email, given the infrastructure outages and struggles they're having. Now, according to local media reports in Greenland, the hacking group suspected of attacking Greenland's health service are thought to be the same cyber criminals who breached the systems belonging to the country's government in March. So this is the second time they've been hit recently. That attack forced the Inatsisartut, the country's parliament, to suspend its meetings for a period of time. And again, Greenlanders, I apologize for butchering your very interesting language. Now, coincidentally, the attacks on Greenland's health service came almost precisely 5 years after the WannaCry ransomware attack in the United Kingdom's National Health Service caused headlines worldwide. 80%, if you recall, of that was the WannaCry, which basically used an exploit known as Eternal Blue. I'm just remembering this off the top of my head. And about 80% or so of the entire National Health Service in the United Kingdom went down. So obviously that's a huge problem. Greenland, obviously not nearly the population, just given who they are, but nevertheless, that's a huge problem, and we are starting to see a rise in governments being hit. I literally just talked about Malaysia earlier here as well, not to mention Costa Rica, so we're going to see a lot of that. But those were your breaches of the week. Another crazy week, and hopefully you weren't affected. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.